You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Franco Luna Puma Podcast. You're listening to Teka Teka News. In this episode,
Since June 1, we have had a lot of rockfall activity that had been steadily and steeply increasing, no, in number and also volume. And that's why on June 5, we raised the alert level to 2.
not one, not two, but three active volcanoes on alert? Teka, pag-usapan natin.
If you have an increase in rockfall, it only means one thing, that the lava dome at the top of the crater is shedding material because something is pushing out. And then on June 8th, we had a sharp increase in rockfall.
You just heard Mariton Bornas. She's Chief Science Research Specialist and the head of the Volcano Monitoring and Eruption Prediction Division at FIVOX. Volcano Mayon cycled through alert levels 1 through 3 in a matter of days. But Mariton says Mayon's unrest wasn't necessarily a surprise for volcanologists.
Mayon volcano is our most active volcano. It typically erupts 3 to 10 years of its last eruption. The last eruption prior to unrest this year was in 2018, so that's 5 years ago. So it's just within that range of time that it is ready to erupt.
There's been a sharp uptick in seismic activity around the volcano, and authorities most recently raised the alert level to 3. That means that an eruption is possible within weeks or even days. The volcano is located in the Bicol region, which is home to over 5 million people. Bukod sa damage to homes and infrastructure, a volcanic eruption could also cause mudslides and flooding, which could displace people and cause widespread damage. How did we get here?
We do have 3 active volcanoes that are at alert, no? And we've had them at alert since 2020 pa. So it's not uncommon to have several of our active volcanoes exhibiting unrest all at the same time. We have many active volcanoes. We have 24 active volcanoes. We have 27 potentially active volcanoes. Statistically, the chances of some of these active volcanoes being at unrest at the same time is very high.
It should be pointed out that Mayon volcano is one of the most active volcanoes in the Philippines and has erupted over 50 times in the past 500 years. It last erupted on January 13, 2018, affecting thousands of families from the towns of Ginobatan, Kamalig, Daraga, Bakakay, Malilipot, and Santo Domingo, and the cities of Ligao, Legazpi, and Tabaco. The volcanic activity at the time lasted until March of that year and led to the declaration of a state of calamity in Albay. But Mariton says it's just not easy to predict these things because of how erratic they are. It could happen tomorrow, but it can also happen months later.
One of the things we have difficulty in trying to make people understand is that Mayon volcano is really a special case. It's one of those open vent volcanoes, one of a few around the world, but is constantly degassing. And therefore, the condition of its magmatic system or of its magma is in almost a constant change. So that when it enters a period of unrest, it's really, really very difficult to forecast what it will do.
How bad can it get? FIVOX says Mayon is capable of 2 types of eruptions, specifically.
So, Mayon is a volcano that can both erupt effusively, these are like quiet outpourings of lava, and also explosively. In most of its eruptions, we get both. So the volcano will begin spewing out lava, and then when there is an increase in volcanic gas emission, we can have maybe fountaining, lava fountains, and then sometimes this activity is punctuated by explosive activity. So this can happen. We've also had eruptions of Mayon, in which the volcano is just spewing out or is just spilling out lava for a long period of time without any explosive activity. This happened for example, in 2006, where it produced a very long lava flow that went a little bit out of the 6 kilometer permanent danger zone. It was really long and it took 4 months.
But there's one thing different about it this time.
We are a bit perplexed with the behavior of Mayon because what it's doing now is one of its common types of activities. But in terms of the monitoring parameters, it's really, really new. We've always had very high sulfur dioxide emission during the eruption of Mayon. But now the sulfur dioxide emission is not going beyond the normal range that is emitted by Mayon, even during alert level 0. Because Mayon is perennially degassing.
Another scenario, as we've already seen before, is that volcanic smog can eventually reach Batangas and Metro Manila.
People have been experiencing, of course, yung difficulty breathing, the eyes, their noses, throats hurt. There have been cases where people have been brought to clinics or hospitals because they are vomiting or feel nauseous or have lost consciousness. So there have been times when villages or communities have been evacuated temporarily because they have been exposed.
But first, a quick break.
The cyclicity of the eruptive periods of a volcano, of an active volcano, really depends on essentially just its magmatic system and the characteristics of its magmatic system.
Again, that's Mariton Bornas. She's Chief Science Research Specialist and head of the Volcano Monitoring and Eruption Prediction Division at FIVOLCS.
It can really change in a heartbeat, especially for an open vent volcano like Mayon. For example, if we have a minor explosion at the top of the volcano, we really worry about these things because a minor explosion is a depressurization event or is a decompression event. And the magma at the depths of the volcano will react. Any sort of decompression or depressurization event at the mouth of the volcano will feed back, throughout the entire system and disturb it. So that could actually initiate ascent of the magma.
At least 15,000 people in Albay have already been evacuated as of this writing. The DALG says that if the situation around Mayon hits alert level 4, that number could climb up to 40,000. Everyone living within the 6-kilometer permanent danger zone around the volcano is advised to evacuate. But there's another problem looming on the horizon. Even Taal is starting to act up again. According to FIVOLCS, Taal has been recording at least 4 volcanic earthquakes and more than 6,300 tons of sulfur dioxide emitted per day.
So there was another spate of high SO2 degassing from Taal, and there was also volcanic tremor that began on June 2 that lasted for several days. So we believe that the high volcanic gas emission and the volcanic tremor were actually related. And the real concern at the time was not that the volcano might exhibit another eruption, but that the volcano is spewing another batch of large volumes of sulfur dioxide that is actually producing volcanic smog or VOG, and that is posing serious health risks to communities around Taal Lake.
As of June 12, state volcanologists said, quote, "There was also a pronounced upswelling of hot volcanic fluids in the main crater lake," end quote. In response to the unrest, the government has evacuated more than 2,000 people from the area around Taal volcano. The evacuees have been taken to temporary shelters in nearby towns. Disaster officials are also urging local governments to keep Taal's island off limits to people.
Taal actually erupts I think the statistics before was an average of 30 years, but it actually can erupt from anywhere between 4 to 53 years. Since it erupted in 2020, it has become quiet for the next year after that. No? And but in March 21, it suddenly entered a period of unrest, beginning with what we call seismic swarms. These are like very frequent volcanic earthquake activity.
Eto pa, nasa alert level 1 na rin ang Kanlaon Volcano sa Negros. Considering it's been years since the volcano's last eruption, FIVOC says that the unrest could indicate a phreatic eruption is looming. So a phreatic eruption is a steam-driven explosion that happens when hot magma comes into contact with groundwater. This type of eruption is usually not very destructive, but it can still cause ashfall and damage to property. So yes, that's 3 of our 24 active volcanoes in the country seeing unrest at the same time. And the question on everyone's minds right now is, do these simultaneous volcanic activities mean anything?
This is the outlook. Maybe tomorrow it will change. So I think we have a difficult time explaining that in the case of Mayon, this is the reality and this is the challenge. And there are several volcanoes around the world that are similar. Very difficult to predict. The chances of some of these active volcanoes being at unrest at the same time is very high. In Indonesia, they have 100 active volcanoes. At every given day, they have an eruption. So sa atin, it's unrest, not necessarily eruption. But we do have unrest at our volcanoes most of the time. Sabay-sabay. Meron din namang times na lahat sila ay quiescent. Quiet.
Like we mentioned, the last time Mayon erupted was in 2018. And the last time Taal did was in 2020. Ang Kanlaon naman 2006. But the thing is, we still haven't recovered from the last few volcanic eruptions in recent memory. Homes and lives weren't the only things we lost back then. I asked Mariton Bornas how the area around Taal was doing.
There are places in Volcano Island where it's really barren. Practically nothing survived, even the plants. But there are, of course, areas that were not actually deposited with too much ash, and the vegetation survived. Taal Volcano Island is actually a bird sanctuary. There are so many migratory birds that frequent the area, especially in the recent decades that we've had fish cages no, in Taal Lake. So, see a lot of migratory birds. So, the birds lost a lot of their habitat, but they are now flocking to the remnant spots of vegetation on the volcano island.
Now Fivox insists they're ready, but will also have to learn to live with Mayon's up and down unrest. Even now, lava is still flowing slowly from Mayon's crater, and authorities aren't discounting the possibility of a more vigorous eruption in the coming days and weeks. The unrest around Mayon volcano is a serious threat to the people of the Bicol region, but the FIVOX is urging calm.
Of course, one of the things that is not being asked right now is how well instrumented is Mayon. Mayon is the most well instrumented volcano we have in the Philippines. We have 11 to 12, I think, seismic stations around the volcano, even up to 1,200 meters elevation, you know. And then we have many ground deformation stations, geochemical stations, a lot of stations for visual monitoring. We even have all-weather stations. We have stations for monitoring explosion. These are infrasound stations. And then we still have our very dedicated colleagues at Mayon Volcano Observatory and here in the Volcano Monitoring Division who conduct backbreaking surveys to collect data, especially yung sulfur dioxide emission, no? Every day now, so that we can have the highest quality data which will inform us what the volcano is doing. So it's well monitored. So any blip, you know, change in its behavior now, we are sure to capture this. But we cannot say 2 weeks from now the volcano will erupt. No, it's not like that. We have to look at the data collected every day and forecast and see if our outlook does not change every day. because this is the kind of volcano that Mayon is.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Thanks for listening.